episode, I'm going to take this quilt top, well, this quilt sandwich that I just finished. I actually just finished sandwiching it day before yesterday. And right now it's currently sitting on top of a king-size bed. So it is roughly 80 inches, 84, I think it's 84 by 84 square. The pattern was out of one of the block magazines from Missouri Star Quilting, and it's called Sunshine Shoo Fly. Say that fast a couple of times. The fabrics that I used in this one, actually this was a layer cake. The fabric is called Hummingbird Lane, and they are batiks. They're beautiful, beautiful batiks, but you can see that you'll see little snippets of hummingbirds all over on this quilt. So it's really, really a lot of fun. Great colors, very springy, summery. And I have someone very, very special in mind for this. So I'm going to be taking this off of the bed, which is kind of my design wall because I don't really have a wall big enough to put a design wall on. So I use my king-size bed a lot. But I'm going to be taking it off of here and bringing it over to the Unique 19 on the Cutie Frame in my sewing studio, and we're going to go from there. All right, and here we are. So here it is. Let's see here. So I always kind of like to work top to bottom. And so now I gotta just kind of figure out what's my top and what's my bottom. Here. And when I'm using the Cutie Frame with some of these bigger quilts, and even with the small ones, I really like to start kind of in the center and work my way out. That way I don't create puckers or pleats that I don't want on the back side. And because you can't really see what you're doing on the back side, it makes a bit of a difference to me. I found that I actually really like how it works out. So let's see what we can come up with here. And this particular quilt is, I didn't even count, 1, 2, it's, well, it's actually 3 large, so it's a 9 patch, a 9 block, I should say. So it's 9 blocks. My center block is going to be right here. So that'll be kind of my starting point. Okay, so now that I have the quilt top, or the quilt sandwich actually, draped over the machine frame. So, and again, it's my little Cutie Frame. Oops, wrong one. I am going to just kind of clamp it into place and get things centered. Now, you probably noticed that I didn't have it extended. So I still have a huge extension. And I bring the extension out after I lay my quilt on top, just because I'm not reaching over it. So I just clamp it in one spot and then I bring it out. Okay, so at this point I release my levers on both sides and I just gently, and I say gently, one side likes to pull out better than the other. Not sure, there we go. And kind of just set it up so there's not, I like to dip the quilt in the middle a little bit, just kind of give it a little extra room, just so that it's not pulling quite so tight. And there we go. Leave about a ½ inch, 3/4, maybe, no, it's roughly an inch on the end. And I do that on both sides. And there we go. So now we can get this guy all straightened out. And there we go. Oops, I'm not liking how crooked that got. So let's just, there we go. That's better. There we go. Nice. Okay, so now that I have the frame extended and it clamped on here, I'm noticing that the end of my center block is right here on the front bar. So I'm going to actually scooch it back just a bit further. I need to go kind of split the difference. So I'm going to kind of go about to this point. Should give me enough room. We'll see. So let's just undo all of this. There we go. That should work. I'm going to try to stay out of your way here, but we'll see. Clamp this guy back down. And last one. Oops. There we go. So that is going to give me barely, it's going to be a tight one, enough room at the top. See how I'm running into the bar up at the top there. Let's see if I can show that closer up. Okay, now you can see maybe like the very back part of my needle holder, right? The foot holder actually is running into the clamps at the back. So I can actually get right, just like I'm like a 1/4 of an inch off of that seam, and I want to be able to get that seam. So I'm going to drop it back towards me just a hair and see where that leaves me. Okay, so I ever so slightly just rearranged it just a hair to get it so now there's about a 1/4 of an inch between the back of my foot holder and where I want to stitch around the block. All right, so now I'm going to roll everything up in the back, which is probably going to cause me a little bit of problem here. So we may have to rearrange yet again. And that's one of the challenges with working with the Cutie Frame and larger quilts like this is getting it to work best for you. And sometimes you just have to try and just kind of figure it out. So let me get around to the other side and roll this up. I am now able to get to the back side of my quilts much, much, much easier. This gives me the ability to be able to roll these. Some people use the leader claws. I don't when I start in the center because it adds a lot more bulk than what I need or want. So I'm just going to kind of, I do fairly tight. I do a nice little roll here. And we'll just snug these guys up. There we go. And let's see. There we go. Perfect. Oh, that looks good. Oops. And again, we've got the little plastic elastic stays. Oops. And I always try to make sure that the tails are not hanging too far. That's why I have these big loops to the back side, because I've actually sewn mine on a few times. Sometimes not hard to do because they just get caught. So, but again, this is like the perfect setup for me in such a small space. Okay, and I'm just going to do a quick double check. So my stitch line for in the ditch for going all the way around my block, if that's what I want to do, and I think it kind of sort of is. So I've got a couple of ideas that I'll go through later. But I wanted to make sure that I didn't catch my hooks. And when I go past it right here, I don't. So, so far, so good. And when I'm going along the back here, I'm pretty aware of these little guys. So I go relatively slow because every now and again I'll catch on one. And if I do catch, I just release it for a second until I get past it and then rehook it back up. So yeah. Great start as far as that goes. Now we have to figure out what we're going to do for thread. All right, so now I need to switch out my threads. And what I've decided to do is go with my white, so this is Glide, and it's the super white, which I think will look great on the top. Yep, I think that'll look really good. I don't know if I'm going to be doing a whole lot of work within the actual color blocks. I might do most of my work within the white. And then for the back, for the bobbin side, I'm going to use this really pretty pale pink. And let me see if I can show you just how wonderful that looks. Here we go. Look at the back on that. And so that's going to look really nice right here. I don't know, you can barely see it. So that'll be nice. It'll just kind of be there as a background. So I'm going to get that ready. And then we'll see what we can come up with for pattern and design. In one of my past videos, I kind of showed a really quick way of changing out thread colors. So I currently have like a dove gray on here, and I want to switch it over to my white. And this was shown to me by another long armor, and I had no idea that you could do this. So I do this almost every time I flip out my threads on both my Qnique 19, but I also do it on my Juki, and I have a Juki TL 2010Q that I use as my sit-down sewing machine. But real briefly, I'm going to try to stay out of the way as best I can. So what I'm going to do is go in here and just snip my thread, leaving kind of a nice long tail. We'll remove the old one, put the new one back in. I'm going to hold this thread off to the side, get this back up in here, and there we go. So I basically take the two and tie them really nicely into a little knot right there, just like that. Make sure it doesn't get caught on anything. I remove the thread from the needle down below, and then I gently but firmly pull it all the way back through. There you go. Until I have the knot where I tied it in my hand right here, and snip, snip. Done. That way I don't have to go through every single time and re-thread the machine. Now the only thing that I make sure I do is I make sure that the thread is actually in between the tensioners, both down here and up here. So, and they're done. I can tell by tugging on it, they're not pulling back a little bit. And then I just continue to thread the machine. Okay, so I'm going to start with a little bit of ruler work. I'm just going to go around the inside of the inner diamond. I still haven't quite 100% decided what I'm going to do in my whites off to the sides. I was kind of thinking something maybe a little fun and feathery, but I'm trying to draw that out still, so still not 100% sure. Anyway, I have my stitch selected at 12 stitches per inch because I like that little bit bigger spacing. And here I'm just going to kind of work on that little bit of stitching in the ditch all the way around that inner block, and then figuring out what I want to do from there. So now that I completed that whole outline going around the shoe fly in the center, I'm going to actually, I unclamped the front. I'm actually going to flip it up. I'm going to double check my tension on the bottom to make sure that everything looks fairly good. And I'll do this from time to time. Sometimes takes a bit of doing. That looks really nice. That looks good. I like it. All right, so we can keep kind of going on there, figure out what I'm going to do next. So let me go back to my sketchbook and see if I can figure out just where I want to go with this, and I'll get back to you. Okay, so I've kind of laid out a couple of designs here, and what I've done is the first one I'm going to show you is using an app. Let me make sure I can see this. So it's using, what's it called? OneNote, I think. It's a Microsoft Office thing, and it's really great because you can actually set it up where you can create a new page and then you can insert a photo. So this is one of the photos that I had taken with my iPhone, And it's just enough for me to kind of get a little bit of an idea of what I want to do here. And so you can see that I've outlined where I want to stitch in the hot pink. So that's one option. A second option, also one of the things that I'll do just to kind of wrap my head around where I want to go and what I want to, how I want this to look, is I'll kind of draw it out by hand, and I get a pretty good feel then for the layout of the blocks, the layout of the patterns. And so this is another option. Now I still am sticking with kind of a major outline on the star itself, and then going in and doing a border work with some pebbles inside, outlining the whole block. But I haven't quite made up my mind. Do I want to do feathers, or do I want to just keep it really simplistic and just, you know, showcase the block? So I'm going to start with just the center of this one that I have going on right here. I'm going to start with this. I'm going to outline all my points here, and then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to create that secondary inset so that I can actually do my pebbles, and then kind of figure out what to do from there. It's really funny because sometimes the quilt just actually has to be in front of me, and I have to be working on it for things to start to move forward and things to start making a little bit of sense. I'm going to get started on doing some more stitch in the ditch around my main star points here. I go all the way around, and then I'll stop, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to actually mark where I need to go to. I'm just going to put little dots kind of at these four corners, because this is going to be a pretty even outline all the way around. So we start with this. I'm going to try to stay out of the way as best I can, but it's always a little hard to do. Beginning to wonder if I should put my glasses on. And I'm going to do my inside square, and it'll go around like this. And so what I've been doing that seems to be working really well for me is I'm using my ruler just to put a small dot right at the intersection of where this line would extend out and where this line would extend out. So I'm matching up my ruler to the end of that and then to the top of this, and I don't know if we can see it real well. And then I'm just putting in a little teeny dot, and that gives me an idea as to where that point is. Let's see, I'm going to come back down here and do this side, and I'll reach my hand in here. My ruler's just a hair on the long side, so I'm going to come in and just get right on that tip. We're going to go back up here and do this side, and you can kind of see there's a little droopiness. I'm going to bring my table up so it's a little bit more flat right here. So I have my ruler table on, and that gives that stability to be able to hold your rulers straight underneath here. So you can see here it's loose, and then when I bring my table up it gets nice and hard. And okay, so I've got one little piece of lint right there. Don't want to mistake that for a pencil dot. Oh my goodness. And so one last one right here. And again, we're going to just kind of come in here and do our little pencil dot. So this pencil that I'm using is by Fons & Porter, and it is an erasable pencil. It came with both the lead-colored lead, pencil-colored lead, and a white lead, which is really great for marking on the darker fabrics. I really like it. Okay, so I'm going to get myself set. I'm going to set myself. I'm going to do it just like this. Right. I'm going in kind of right along this line right here, because that's going to be my inside line. And I need to pull my bottom thread up. I'm used to doing it with my other hand, so I'm used to actually holding my threads and stuff with my left hand and crossing my arm over. But if I do that, then you can't see what I'm doing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to It's easier for me to actually line myself up this way, but I'm going to stitch to that little teeny dot that we had just put in there. So it's right there. Sorry, my shadows. I'm trying to get enough light in here for everybody to see. So we're going to come out to that dot and stop, turn, and now we're going to come back out to this dot way down here. And we might be just off by a hair, but that's okay. That's pretty good. And it's real close. We're going to come back up here. And again, this is where it gets backwards for me because I'm normally reaching around from the other side. I'm going to actually see if I can do it from the other side. But it's still an awkward reach. Whoops, and I just bobbled with my ruler. That happens, so, you know, don't expect perfection every single time. Sometimes it's all about the balancing act of it all. Okay, and so we've got one more to go here. I'm gonna move my threads out of the way so I can get right in here. My tails here because I don't want to stitch them in. They're hard to pull out if you accidentally do. Now, I'm strategic about how I do this because I'm going to come up, I'm going to match up right here where I started, but then I'm going to back up to this line and then I'm going to work my motif in the middle of this square. And that way I'm not having to break my thread again or cut my thread, however you want to. Now this one, like I've done with all the other ones, I come down and then I'm doing just a little point here and then across, over to this side, same thing, and then up. So it works out really well. I can actually do the whole thing without having to cut my thread, having to start and stop. Okay. All right, so we're right at the end of that one, and they're never perfect, they're never exact, but I'm gonna come up, stop, go back down, give myself about 1/4 inch from that point to this point. There we go. Fudge it a little bit, doesn't really matter. I'm not working on perfection, I'm working on completion because I have like 3 other quilts I need to get done. There we go. Now we're going to go back up. Oops, off by just a hair on that one, but that's okay. Bobbled on that one again. That again. It's okay. And there we go. Okay, so we've got that little bit done. Now I do have to break my thread because I'm going to be going 1/4 inch in from this stitch line. I'll do that once around. And then I'm going to be doing 1/4 inch in from this line. And then I get to do my circles again. All right, so let's just see where we keep going with this one. Okay, so I have my needle placed, my bottom thread pulled up. I am the width of, I shouldn't say the width. So basically I'm at the edge of my ruler foot, and from this needle in the center of your ruler foot to the edge of your ruler foot is right at about 1/4 inch, but it's a really good just guideline as far as figuring out about how far out you want to go. So here, I'm just going to come out, and I'm going to watch the edge of my foot so I can get right even with where the edge of the back of the foot there would match this line here. Now I can come across on this way. I'll do the same thing here. And it's like give or take. Sometimes I'm right on the money. Sometimes I'm off by a half a stitch. This one I'm off by a half a stitch. So we're going to kind of see if we can scooch just one more stitch out right there. And then, now this is an awkward position again for my hands. I'm going to come in right here and do it this way. And see, this is where it gets awkward because I can't, I got a little skinny right there. But again, it's okay. And honestly, I don't know how a lot of these people make things look so good and so easy, because setting things up and trying to quilt with these cameras right in front of your face, no easy task, let me tell you. Especially from my little teeny home studio. Okay, so I'm going to go back across the top and I'm going to line this one up. Okay, I'm going to stop here for just a second because I moved, my ruler moved a bit on that one, which I felt it. That's okay. And now I'm going to come down and finish it up. There you go. All right. So again, I mean, it might be a little noticeable if you're really looking for it, but I'm working on, you know, practicing, getting better with each motif that I do, getting better with my lines and my ruler work. And each time I do it, I learn something new. And so I'm not trying to make it perfect. I'm just not, because I'm not there. Again, I've literally had this setup, my Unique 19, on the Cutie Frame since March of this year. So I haven't even had this for 1 year yet. And I've never free motion quilted on a frame before with a long arm. Prior to that, I hadn't done anything like that. So still new at this and still learning. So here's the big thing. If I can do this, so can you. All right, so now I'm going to start on the outside here. And again, my hand is probably in, oops. That one got, this is the nice thing about this part right here. That one got a little close. So I'm going to back up just a hair right here. There we go. That's much better. That's much better. All right, so now I am going to follow this line right here. Oops, all the way down. And here we go. Now at this point, it's also really super easy to actually move your ruler one way or the other to create an offset line, and that's kind of what happened over in this area. If I make sure that my ruler is even, this edge is even on this colored seam up here, and butt it up right next to my ruler foot, and then even down here, I'm gonna get a pretty darn straight line. And then what I want to do is, again, watch where my foot is and stop right at that stitch line. So let's just see what I can do here. Right on that stitch line. Now we're going to go up this way. These are easier for me to do. This backside back here is a little bit more difficult. So, and now my hand's totally in the way. And one last run here. Oops. There we go. Always pay attention to where you are on your ruler too. You only have, you know, 5, 6 maybe inches, because if you hit the end of this and you're not paying attention, you will literally go zoom right across in the other direction, because you have just that hair bit of force with your ruler foot being snugged up to, get rid of these guys, your ruler. And so if you, all of a sudden that edge of that ruler's not there, you're gonna zoom off into quilt land somewhere. And that is probably something that will need to be taken apart. You'll never guess who's done that once or twice before. Oops. So let's just finish this one up. Oh, and you know what? I messed up. I didn't want to cut my thread there because I'm going to start my circles, and I could have done it from right there. I wasn't even thinking. That's okay. Live and learn. After taking just a couple minutes of a timeout and sipping on some hot coffee and looking at where I'm going on this, I'm back, and I'm going to do another round of, call them pebbles, call them bubbles. To me, they're circles because I'm doing them in a line, in a row as I go. Sometimes if I have room, I'll pop a little one down here, but they are circles. I find it kind of funny when I didn't realize it until just a few minutes ago, but I feel like I have this death grip on my handlebar when I'm doing these circles because I'm trying so hard to not go outside my lines and to make sure that I'm not double looping everything. And so I just need to kind of take a deep breath and relax for a little bit, because that is one of the things that I found is that when you're relaxed, things just move more smoothly. So don't forget to breathe and relax and loosen up that death grip. Okay, so I finished up this center motif and the outline of my stars. I'm still not 100% sure what I want to do in the white space. I do know what I want to do in the border, but I still have 3 more of these that I need to finish, and they're on the other side. Now, this is one of the things that I really, really love about this frame. So it's a 48-inch frame across, and I have the depth right here to work with my Unique 19, and so I get about 16 or so inches of throat space, top to bottom here, to work with. Now, one of the things that can be a little bit of a contributing factor, actually it's more of a factor that takes away from that space, is up at the top here, and I'm going to see if I can adjust my camera here. So up at the top here, which is where I roll all my quilt up, and put it up here. If I need to do another whole section like this, and it's on the opposite side, then that means that I've got a lot. I mean, this will probably get about this thick. I don't know if you can see that. It'll get really thick up here. So that's going to take up a lot of extra space up in the area there, where I will not be able to get, I'll end up losing a good solid 3 inches more with all that quilt rolled up. So on the Cutie Frame, it's really great because all I have to do is take the quilt off, completely flip it over, and put it back on. And then I have just a slight amount of rolled quilt at the top here. And the rest of it just drapes down onto the floor. So I'm going to work on doing that real quick, and I will get back to you. And there we have it. Completely flipped it upside down, and because my motif, I don't know if you can see it down the front here, this is a very center block. All of my blocks on the bottom half, so this is kind of 9 large blocks. So the bottom 6 have already been done, so I just have these top 3 left to do. And because there is no direction to how these blocks are done, they're pretty symmetrical, I'm not going to have an issue quilting them nearly as bad as I do when I'm trying to quilt feathers in what turns out to be kind of an opposite direction for me. I have a really hard time with those. I can go one direction really well, but the other direction is like not so easy. And I might be fighting with that one because I might be doing feathers on the border on this one. We'll see. Stay tuned. Okay, so I've unclamped the quilt, and I'm going to take this one off to start off with, and I'm going to slide, and I just kind of take my quilt as a whole, top, bottom, and make sure I've got everything here, and I gently pull it along the rails so that I'm not pulling things up too much. See how I'm just kind of going along here? All right, so that's not far enough, so we have to go, we're kind of back in the center here, so we have to go one more round. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to put this clamp back down on the end down here, and I'm going to do that without getting directly in front of the camera. Let me see if I can do it from the back side. Let's see what I can do here. So we'll just pop this one back on here. There we go. And now I'm going to take this one off, and I'm going to do the same thing I just did. There we go. And I'm going to just gently slide it down along the top and the back. There you go. Just like that. Just like that. So now I should have enough room to go all the way over. And I usually test it real quick and hope I don't catch on one of my... Yeah, I've got plenty of room. So I've got plenty of room. I'm going to reclamp it, and we'll get back to work on this last square in the center. And then I'm going to start working on some border work because I'm still not 100% sure what I want to do in the middle. So let me get this one clamped and we'll go from there. Okay, so I've got the clamps on, and all I have to do is roll up the back here real quick. Top, depending on how you want to look at it. Get this one all, clipped up here nice and secure. And then we've got just this one last block to go. We're going to get that one done. And then we're going to start working on this border area back over in here. So let's see how this goes.